So I went ahead and replaced the stock amp on my V-Star 1300 Deluxe with this Kenwood Max Power 400 watt 4-channel Bluetooth marine amp. And I just thought I would kind of go over the install in case anyone had any questions or if they just wanted to see how easy it was, since there's not a lot of videos on this, and there's a lot of questions about it from time to time. So here's the stock amp. It's a 2-channel. I'm not sure the wattage on it, but I went ahead and replaced it for a couple reasons. First one is there's no Bluetooth connectability on it. And then the other bigger reason really is just the sound quality is not that great. It's notorious for clipping, which is where the music just kind of cuts in and out for no reason. There's a couple wire harnesses on here. That's the 1/8 inch that the Garmin plugs into for sound. Those two white ones with all those multicolored wires, those go back to the US or the iPod connector in the hard trunk. This big one is the most important one, and it has the wires that you're actually going to use. Obviously on the other connector that comes out of the fairing, but I just wanted to, since I've removed it, I just wanted to go ahead and show you these wires. There's two red wires and there's two black wires, and those wire into the auxiliary power wire in the headlamp bucket. Those are what the auxiliary lights also wire into if you do not have the fairing. So they do have power when it's on. There's no hot wire to the fairing, but we'll talk about that here in a second. There's two other wires on here. There's three other wires. There's a yellow and a white wire. Those go to a different harness. Not really sure what they go to, but then there's also a pink wire, which I'm pretty sure goes to the speed sensor, which is why the stock amp gets quiet when you slow down. So the new amp doesn't use that, so I just kind of clipped it, capped it, and tucked it in. I'm not going to worry about it. So one thing I wanted to discuss was there was another guy that did a video, and he left his stock amp installed, and he just installed this basically on top of it. He tapped his power into here. He commented that he figured it was the power wire because of the fuse, and that's half correct. This is actually the power wire for the Garmin. If you see these purple and pink wires right here, these actually wire into the amp on the stock, and that's the stock. That's where attaches to the stock amp. I don't recommend doing what he did, just because your new amp and your Garmin would both be drawing power directly from the stock amp, and I don't know if that would cause any problems down the road. But since I'm not using the stock amp and I needed the space, I just went ahead and removed it. I cut that big wire harness off, and I just wired the Garmin quick release directly into one of the auxiliary power wires, and then I used a quick disconnect to wire the blue wire and the ground wire of the amp into the other auxiliary wire. So as I mentioned, there's no hot wire for the amp. So this yellow wire right here, which goes directly to the battery, it's long enough that you can run it directly under the tank and directly to the battery. You don't need any additional wire or anything like that. So that's a bonus. I'm not using the rear speakers at the moment, so I've got the purple and green wires tucked down into this little cavern back here. And then I've just kind of got the wires, the extra wire and everything tucked down in there. So when I mounted this thing, it came with self-tapping screws, but they weren't quite long enough. So I actually had some 6-inch deck screws that were pretty close to what they sent. The pitch is a little bit more aggressive, but they were nearly identical. They were just longer. So what I did was, where I've got these wires tucked in, there's a bit of a cavern here, and you can actually drill into that without having to worry about the screws poking through your bearing where people can see them or anything like that. So, and I just went ahead and used a little Flex Seal tape on top of that to give it just a little bit more support, because that stuff is amazing. And as you can see, it's not going anywhere. So this yellow and black wire, don't worry about. It goes to my garage door opener that's wired into a button, so I can open my garage door when I'm riding. So To connect to the Garmin audio, you need an RCA to 1/8 inch adapter. They're a couple dollars at the store. They're really easy. You just plug it into the Garmin, plug it into one of the audio ends, and it's good to go. There's a second audio in if you want to attach like an 1/8 inch in for like an iPod or something to that effect. There's also a stereo audio out. So if I wanted to put speakers in my trunk later on, and I wanted to put an amp back there, that's what this would be for. This is the bundle for the Garmin. This is the bundle for the Bluetooth controller, and that's pretty much everything that's in there. The instructions are pretty straightforward. The install is really simple. The longest it took me about an hour, but majority of that was just figuring out what wires were on that harness. I've got auxiliary lamps, so taking off the headlight bucket's a little annoying. So that's what took me the longest. But once I figured out where all the wires went, it was a super simple install. So here's the Bluetooth controller. How I've got it mounted is it came with this little screw, and as you can see, there's these 3 screws that the stock controller mounted to. This will fit right in there, and it'll attach perfectly. If you've got big hands like I do, or fat knuckles, you might bang that if you're not careful, but you'll get used to it, and you'll just avoid it. So it's not really a big deal. One thing I will say about this, so obviously it doesn't quiet down when you slow down like the stock one does, because we're not using that speed sensor, but just something to be aware of. The volume control on here does not control the volume on anything plugged into those audio in ports. So in this case, I've got the Garmin plugged in. I cannot control, unlike the stock setup, I cannot control the volume for the Garmin on here. If I had an iPod or something plugged in, I would not be able to control the volume on it from here. Just be aware of that. If you're, riding, it'll just be an extra thing that you have to fiddle with. So just FYI. So let's go ahead and turn this on. As you can see, the Garmin is powering on, so we've got power to it. As you can see, the Bluetooth is working. So we can pause it, you can play it, you can move to the next song, you can move back. There's the volume control. Even with the stock speakers, the sound quality is better than the stock amp. You don't have to worry about clipping anymore. So you can ignore my taste in music there. And then when you turn it off, as you can see, the Bluetooth turns off and the Garmin turns off, just like the stock amp. So yeah, everything works the way that it's supposed to. The install was super simple. My new speakers are going to come in tomorrow. I had some Boss Marine 5 1/4s, but the magnet on them is huge and they wouldn't fit in these speaker buckets, and I didn't feel like taking them off. So I ordered the Pile 5 1/4s that a lot of people have recommended. I'm hoping, they said that they fit in here without taking these off, so I'm going to see if they do. If they don't, then I'll just have to get some spacers, I guess. I don't know. But so anyway, that's the install. If anyone has any questions or comments on anything I could maybe do differently, just let me know. Thanks.